Assiduous Academy back here with basic and applied anatomy, the component gross anatomy, and we're going to be looking at the skeletal system. And well, in today's class, we're going to start with looking at the types of bones. So how do you get to classify different bones? You know that the skeletal system is just made up of bones, but how do we get to classify those bones in the skeletal system? All right. So when we get to consider the bones which are in the skeletal system, the bones can be classified into six major parts, or let me say five major components. Now, firstly, we need to know that when we are talking about these bones, we have got long bones, we have got short bones, we have got irregular bones, we have got flat bones, and also sesamoid bones. All right. Now, the long bones in the body are 90, while the short bones are 28, irregular bones are 48, flat bones are 36, and sesamoid bones 4. Okay, now, well, the total number of bones in the human skeletal system are 206, and this is their division, right? So if we are able to do some simple math here, we just get to add what we have. We have got 90 bones which are long, plus 28 bones which are short, plus 48 which are irregular, plus 36, and then plus 4. So 90 plus 28 plus 48 plus 36 and then plus 4. This is going to give us a total 206 bones which are found in a human being. This is an adult human being. All right. Now, what are long bones? Well, when we are talking about long bones are most located in the appendicular skeleton. Now, the skeleton itself is going to be divided into the axial skeleton and the appendicular. So, the appendicular, this is where we get to find the hands and the legs. That's the appendicular, those long parts. Okay, that's the appendicular skeleton. So the long bones, we can even clearly see that this bone which is here is long, right? This bone here is also long. And then we have got these two bones which are here, they are also long. We also have on the legs these two bones, they are also long. We also have these bones on the feet, they are also long. Even these are also long. So these are what we call as long bones. All right. So examples we have got on the hand, this bone we are able to see here is the humerus. And then when it comes to the legs, this long bone we are able to see here is the femur. And then we are going to come also to the hand where we've got the radius and the ulna. And then on the leg we have got the tibia and the fibula. We are going to come to the leg again. This portion of the leg, we are going to have the metacarpals. And then on the hand, we are going to have the phalanges. Okay, so these are the types of long bones which we have. So basically, when you are considering long bones, they are really long just from the word itself. And another characteristic of long bones is that they've got two ends. Okay, and those two ends they articulate with other bones. So you can see that at this end, this bone is articulating with these other bones, and then at this end also it also articulates with other bones there, right? So those are long bones. All right. So we also have short bones. Now, just from the word short bones, meaning that they are short, really, just from the word itself. And examples of short bones that we can talk about are the carpals and tarsals. So remember, long bones, we mentioned the phalanges and also the metacarpals. Now, for the short ones, we're going to talk about the carpals and the tarsals. So this bone which you are able to see here, these are what we call the carpals. They are found on the hand. And then on the leg, we are going to refer to them as the tarsals, right? Just like we are going to refer to these as the metatarsals. And then these here are going to be called metacarpals. Those are long bones, all right? But the carpals and the tarsals, those are short bones. They are mostly found where there is a connection of other bones or between bones like that. All right. So what are their characteristic, or what is the characteristic of these short bones? Well, short bones, they are going to be more cuboidal in shape. They are more like a cuboid, like that. They are more cuboidal, just like we can see here and also at this point, right? So they are cuboidal and they are also round. Sometimes if they are not cuboidal, then they are going to be round. So that is their characteristic, a characteristic of short bones. All right, other bones, we have got irregular bones. Irregular. Now, just from the word itself, they are irregular, meaning that the shape cannot be easily determined like that. And examples of irregular bones we can mention are mostly those bones that we are able to find on the midline or on the middle of the skeletal system, right? On the midline. For example, I've got the sacrum, which is this bone which is here. That's the sacrum there. We have got the coccyx, which is the tail. That is the bone that is found at the end of the sacrum there. We also have the temporal, sphenoid, and ethmoid bones. Now, these bones are found on the head. The temporal, the sphenoid, and the ethmoid bones are found on the head. And we are going to look at the skull to understand the bones which are there. All right. We also have the zygomatic bone, which is also found on the head. The maxilla, we have got the mandible, palatine, and inferior nasal concha, and the hyoid bones. So all these bones, they are found on the head. So those are irregular bones. Well, we also have just this one itself, which is uh, the cerebral column. Those bones in the cerebral spine are also irregular bones. So we are saying that most irregular bones are found on the midline. When we're talking about midline, we are just referring to the middle of the human body. So that is where we get to find irregular bones. And then we have got the flat bones. So flat bones, just from the word, they are flat, they are thin, and they can be a bit of curved. So they are mostly there to protect internal organs. And examples we can refer to, we have got the skull. Okay, all this is a skull. The bones on the head, that are the skull. Of course, we've mentioned that just on the head. We've mentioned all these is zygomatic, maxilla, mandible, palatine. We've said those are what irregular bones. So in this case, we're going to refer to the upper part here. That is going to be the ones which are going to say flat. Okay. So we also have the flat bone, which is this one here, which is the sternum. Of course, we can see even the scapula here, that is also flat. So those are some examples of flat bones. All right. So we also have the sesamoid bones, and they are just four. So sesamoid bones are unique because they do not connect to other bones. Okay, they do not connect to other bones. Actually, any bone that is not classified as long, short, irregular, or flat is a sesamoid bone. And they are mostly found within muscles, and they are often connected through tendons, right? So tendons are just tissue which gets to connect a bone and a muscle like that. So that is where we're going to find sesamoid bones. They are mostly found on joints, the sesamoid bones. So they are going to lie within tendons. For example, we have got the patella, which is found on the knee. So that is a sesamoid bone. So that is how we get to classify bones, basically classified into five different types. Flat bones, we need to know, of course, the uh, a lot of bones in the body are long. So we have got about 90, which is over 50% of the bones that we have. Of course, bones are 206, meaning that 90, that will not be even over 50%. But it is the highest number, long bones. And then the next number, so if we want to know like how many bones are long, we need to know, of course, long bones are 90. So the next highest number is the irregular, those which do not have a regular shape. Just divide the 90 by 2. Of course, we know 90 by 2 would give us 45, but we can see 48 is more closer to 45. So all we can know is that irregular bones are about half long bones, except they are a bit higher. They are 48. And then those which follow, they are flat bones, which are 36. And then we have got short bones, which are 28. And then sesamoid bones are very small. Right? So there are just four of them. Apart from the patella as a sesamoid bone, we have got also the pisiform, which gets to protect tendons. All right. So when we are talking about, let's get to look at the structure of a long bone. So when you get to look at the structure of a long bone, it's going to have the cartilage. Okay, so the cartilage is the very end of a long bone there. And this is a portion that you are going to see connected to other bones. Remember, we said long bones, they get to articulate or they get to join with other bones. We also have the spongy bone, which is also called the cancerous bone. That is the inside of the bone, right? We also have the compact bone that is also a bit of the inside. We also have the medullary cavity, which is more the middle of the long bone. We also have the periosteum, which is this hard part or the outside part of the bone. Now, the bone itself is going to be divided into the diaphysis, which is also called the shaft, that long part. We also have the metaphysis just below the diaphysis. We also have the end, which is called the epiphysis. All right. So when you get to see the middle between the metaphysis and the epiphysis, we have got this region. For example, when you are eating chicken, there is that end of the bone such that you can remove this part, which is the epiphysis, just with your mouth. And there is that connection where, when you get to remove this, that portion where the epiphysis is connected, that is called the growth plate, okay, or the epiphyseal plate. All right. So this is the structure of a long bone. So the medullary cavity is a hollow part of the bone, this part of the bone that contains bone marrow. And you know that the bone marrow is what makes blood cells and also gets to store fat. All right. So here again is another structure of the same long bone that we saw. So at the end we said we have got the cartilage. We can also refer to it as articular cartilage because it gets to articulate or to join with other bones. And then we have got the spongy bone, which we also said as the cancerous bone. So it looks more like cancer like that. Okay, so that's the cancerous bone or the spongy bone, the inside of that bone. We also have the periosteum, okay, which is the outside of the bone, that hard part. We also have the compact bone, which is more in the inside of the periosteum, right? We also have the growth plate. So we can see that here I've got the growth plate. Even here we are going to have it. Okay, so we also divided the bone We said the long bone can be divided into basically three regions. We have got the diaphysis, we have got the epiphysis, and the metaphysis. The epiphysis is supposed to be the end of the bone. The diaphysis is also called the shaft, that is the long part of the bone. Okay, but between the diaphysis and the epiphysis, we said we have got the metaphysis, even though on this one we cannot see. So we have got the metaphysis between there. All right. Now, what are the functions of these parts, or what really are these parts? So we have got the growth plate, which is also called the epiphyseal plate. This one allows bones to grow in childhood and also in early adulthood. So the growth plate is what gets to allow bones to be able to grow. So that soft part there. We also have the compact bone here, the compact bone, which is also called the cortical bone. It forms the hard external layer of all bones with this one, the compact bone. The hard external layer of all bones and surrounds the medullary cavity. So you can see the medullary cavity is that inside of the bone, the hollow part of the bone. So that is what it surrounds, right? So it provides protection and strength to the bone. So therefore, protection and also strength. We also have this outside part, which is a periosteum. What is its function? It supplies the bone blood. Okay, periosteum supplies blood the bones need and helps them to grow and heal. That outside part. So if you damage or injure a bone, it is a periosteum what to repair the damage and regrow your bone as you recover. It is also the attachment point of ligaments and tendons. So this more outside, the very outside of the bone. Okay, the hard part, of course, is the compact bone, but the very outside of the bone, and that one which you are able to see. So that is the periosteum, and it is pain sensitive. So when you get to hit yourself, it is what gets to sense the pain. So this is where muscles are going to attach, and also ligaments and tendons in case you are getting to connect. Maybe this bone is connecting to another bone, so the muscles or the ligaments are going to come and attach on the periosteum. All right. So we also have a spongy bone, which is also called the cancerous bone. What is its function? So the spongy bone helps to lessen the weight of a bone while still providing strength. So this portion, which is inside, I think we do see this when we get to break the bone. That portion that we get to see inside, that's a spongy bone, which is more soft and is mostly eaten when you are getting to eat a bone. So that's a spongy bone. It is there to lessen the weight of a bone while still providing strength. All right. We also have the articular cartilage, which you are able to see at the end here. So the articular cartilage is a thin layer of specialized connective tissue. So its principal function is to provide a smooth replicated surface for low friction articulation and to facilitate the transmission of loads to the underlying bone. All right. So what happens is that when another bone gets to connect here, the cartilage is a connective tissue, so it's going to lower the friction because mostly these long bones are going to be found at joints where you are able to move. For example, consider at your shoulder. Okay, the bone there is able to move, like you can move your hand up or down, so there's going to be friction there. So the articular cartilage is there to reduce that friction. Okay, it provides a smooth and lubricated surface. That is a function. Well, that is going to be it for this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to subscribe.